to All Things Jira, and if you don't know, I'm Jira. Now, I tend to go on Facebook, Instagram, and I scroll through the stories and see what people are posting, read some of the articles. And sometimes I find some of the articles interesting and I want to find out more about it. Sometimes I just want to find out if they're real or fake because there's a lot of fake stuff on the internet. So that's what I wanted to bring to my YouTube channel. I wanted to add a couple videos of the things that I found interesting that I looked more into. Some of them may turn out to be fake and I may find that out when I'm researching. Some of them were just weird and I thought they were interesting. So that's what I wanted to do. So every so often I'm going to post videos of the different things that I found on the internet, and I'll dig a little deeper and give you as much information as I could find. Some stories are going to be weird, some are going to be funny, some are going to be sad, but I'll try to post what I have. This story that I came across was about 9 Russian hikers that went on a ski trip and they died under mysterious conditions. The media has called the story the Dyatlov Pass Incident, and it was named after the leader of the group, Igor Dyatlov. So in January 1959, a group of 10 hikers got together and they wanted to do a ski trip, a ski hike up this mountain, up the peak of a mountain called Otorten. So they got together, decided to go on this hike. There was 10 hikers, 8 men and 2 women. The mountain that they wanted to go up was considered a category 3. That's one of the most difficult hikes that you can make in that area. Now, the average temperature in that area was negative 15 degrees Celsius, which is about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So you would have to have a high level of physical fitness and you need to be experienced to go up this mountain. Now, all of the skiers were experienced. All of the group members were very experienced. Most of the group members were from a school called Ural Polytechnic Institute in Russia. They were all very experienced ski hikers. Their ages ranged from 20 to 38. All of them have done several of these ski trips before, overnight and long distance ski trips. Now, this particular trip was going to take them anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. Their goal was to be back down the mountain and back home by February 12th, 1959. So this is January 1959. They set out on their trip January 27th of 1959. There was 10 hikers altogether. On January 28th, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, he wasn't feeling too well. Some websites said that he was sick. Some places I read said that he had knee pain. But I believe I found one interview where he said it was an issue with his sciatic nerve. He had inflammation in his nerve. It had happened before and he thought it was going to go away. But it didn't. As they went on the trip, because it was so cold, it just made it worse. So on January 28th, Yuri decided that he couldn't keep going, that he had to stop, he had to turn back because he was not going to make it up the trip with the rest of the hikers. So he was not going to make it up the mountain with the rest of the hikers. Beginning of the trip, Igor told his ski club or his sports club that he would send a telegram when they got back to let everyone know that they were okay. So when Yuri decided that he was going to go back home because he couldn't make it any further, Igor asked Yuri to send a message to everyone and let them know that they may be late. So not to worry if they didn't get down the mountain by February 12th like they had originally planned. Sometime in the evening of February 2nd, the group decided to stop for the day and they were going to camp out on the slope of a mountain. Now, I'm not going to try to say the mountain's name because I can't pronounce it, but the translation is Mountain of the Dead. And they decided they were going to camp out on that slope. No one knows why they decided to camp out on the slope. There was a ridgeline of trees about a mile away from where they decided to camp, and that tree line would have given them more protection. So no one understands why they decided to camp on the slope of the mountain, but that's what they did. They set up their tent. They had one big tent for everyone. They made dinner, and it looked as if they had decided to go to bed for the night and then set back out on their trip the next day. Now, they were keeping a diary and taking photographs all along this trip, so there were records of where they had been and what they had done, and there were several pictures, and I'm going to try to add those as well. So this night that they decided to set up camp on that slope of the mountain, there's no other record of what they did after that. There's no other record or anything of what they did after they had dinner and set up camp for the night. February 12th rolls around, and no one hears from the group. The family and friends didn't really worry because Yuri did pass along the message that Igor gave him, letting them know that they might be late. So when February 12th rolled around and they weren't back, no one really worried. They had been on ski trips before like this that have taken a little bit longer than they had anticipated. And because they were all very experienced, People, their family and friends were pretty sure that they were okay. So that was February 12th. February 20th comes around and no one has heard from them. And at this point, their family and their friends are starting to worry. Because yes, they are experienced hikers, but they're all pretty young too. They were all pretty young and their families want to know what's going on now. This amount of time past their deadline was a little strange for them. So they contacted the school and the school contacted the authorities. So that was on February 20th. A search party set out on February 21st to find the hikers. On February 26th, the search team came across their campsite. So they found the tent. The tent was partially standing. There was a little snow on top of the tent. So they managed to go on the tent. When they got in there, they saw all the hikers' boots were lined up in a row. Everything was pretty neat. All their luggage and all their belongings were pretty neat. And they could see the remnants of a dinner that they had had. But the hikers were not in the tent. The tent was also cut open. When they got to the open portion of the tent, they realized that there were footprints leading from that open portion out to the mountain. And looking at this, investigators later concluded that the tent was cut open from the inside. Based on the footprints, they could tell that the hikers didn't run, but that they walked kind of quickly away. They could also tell that most of the hikers weren't wearing shoes. Some were completely barefoot. Some had socks on. One person was only wearing one shoe. So as they looked down at the tree line, they noticed a fire. They noticed the remnants of a fire beneath one of the trees. So they go down there to check it out. They see that the fire had been lit, but it didn't last very long. They noticed that the tree had broken branches up about 5 meters from the base of the tree. Later on, they would also find that there was skin embedded into the bark of that same tree. So they start to look around, try to figure out what's going on, and they find 2 of the bodies. I'm going to try to pronounce their names the best way that I can. I do apologize if I get the names wrong. So they found 2 bodies of 2 of the hikers. The bodies that they found were of Yuri Krevanshenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They found some of their clothing hanging from the tree, but neither one of them were wearing much clothing. They were both shoeless and they were in their underwear. They could tell that the way the branches on the tree were broken, that one of them had tried to quickly climb up the tree, which is why the branches were broken and they found skin embedded in the bark of the tree. Now, Yuri Doroshenko, they're assuming that he's the one that tried to climb the tree. He had burns on his head and on his foot. So they're thinking he tried to climb up the tree and fell. Yuri Doroshenko also had minor cuts and bruises. He also had a grayish fluid coming out of his mouth. They said that this is an indicator of pulmonary edema. Later on, they would also notice that livor mortis indicated that someone had moved their bodies after they had died. On February 27th, which is the next day, the searchers found 2 more bodies of the hikers. Now, these bodies were Igor Dyatlov, which is who the pass is named after, and the other body was Zenata Komologrov. Igor was the leader of the group. He was found 300 meters up from the fire in the cedar tree going towards the tent. He had minor cuts and bruises. He had a missing tooth and blood on his lips. Other than that, there were no other injuries. Later on, they would determine that he died from hypothermia. Zenata was found 360 meters up from the tree line, and she was the closest to the tent. She had minor cuts and bruises and a large blunt force bruise of unknown origin. Later on, they would determine that her cause of death was hypothermia as well. Now, some time had passed, because remember, this is Russia. It's wintertime, so there's lots of snow. So some time passed before they found the next bodies. The next bodies were found on March the 5th. Now, the body that they found on March 5th belonged to Rustem Slobodin, and he was found to have a small crack in his skull. Now, when Rustem, Igor, and Zenata were found, they were all in positions that led investigators to believe that they were trying to head back to the tent when they died. On May 5th, which is 2 months later, the last 4 bodies were found. These bodies belonged to Lyumida, Alexander, Nikolai, and Semyon. Now, the bodies of the last 4 were better dressed than the others. They were found wearing socks, shoes, multiple sweaters, coats, and things like that. And it looked as if they had taken clothes off the bodies of their other group members that had died before them. Now, 3 of the 4 bodies had fatal injuries, including skull fractures and broken ribs. Okay, there's a lot to this part, so I'm going to have to read it. The body of Nikolai had major skull damage, and both Lyudmila and Semyon had major chest fractures. These injuries would have required as much force as a car crash, but the bodies had no external wounds that indicated the cause. Alexander was found to have died of hypothermia, but he had a broken nose and was missing his eyes and the soft tissue around them. Lyudmila was found missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips, some facial tissue, and a fragment of her skull. Now, radiation was found on 3 pieces of clothing worn by 2 of the group members. That was Alexander and Lyudmila. They don't know where this radiation came from, but it was found on, I believe, a pair of sweatpants and 2 sweaters. Now, the investigation continued throughout the month of May, but on May 28th, the investigation was called off. They had determined that an avalanche may have come down and either covered the tent and the group was forced to leave, or the group heard it and they were scared, so they left, without wearing their shoes or being able to get dressed rather quickly. So that's what the investigators determined. They closed the case. They decided that, some of the group members had died from hypothermia, and then 3 of the group members died from those major injuries that they had, and they closed the case. The area was shut down for about 3 years after that. They didn't want anyone in or out of there. Now, after the 3 years passed, people did go there and they did try to do their own investigations and see if they could figure out what was going on, because of course the families were not happy with these results. The families wanted to know exactly what happened to their family members, their friends, their loved ones. They wanted to know what happened. So there were always theories and different things going on in the town with the locals. There were always different theories going around about what really happened. No one believed that it was an avalanche. Igor, the leader of the group, was one of the most experienced of the group, and he would have known not to camp out anywhere where there could have been an avalanche or a snow slab. So no one believed that an avalanche came. The group was just too experienced to make that type of mistake. In September 2018, almost 60 years later, a new investigation started. The prosecutor's office requested all the documents, all the pictures, anything that was available on the case. In March 2019, investigators returned to the site, but they were only going to look at 3 different scenarios: an avalanche, a snow slab, or a hurricane. July 11th, 2020, the investigation was done. They decided that there was an avalanche, and that was what forced the group out of their tent. That they did die from hypothermia and different exposures. Now, the girl that was missing her lips, her eyes, her tongue, they determined that must have been animals. They weren't for sure. They didn't find, animal prints or anything of that nature, but they couldn't come up with any other reason why she would be missing these parts. Now, because of the sudden stop of the investigation back in May 1959 and the odd cause of death, the odd circumstances, of course, this led to many, many, many conspiracy theories. Those theories ranged anywhere from aliens to government cover-ups. A lot of people thought that it was the military. Thought the hikers were out there on the mountain. They saw something that they shouldn't have seen, and that the military went out there and basically handled them. Another suspicion was placed on a group of people called the Mansi people. Now, those were indigenous people that lived in that area at that time. Well, they suspected that the Mansi people found this area of land sacred to them, and that they were upset that the hikers were trespassing on their land, so they killed them. Now, the Mansi people came out and said, no, this land is not sacred to us. We don't care about this land any more than any other piece of land. Hikers come here all the time, and no one has ever been harmed by the Mansi people. Investigators did not find any evidence of the Mansi people doing anything to the hikers, so they left that alone. Now, during the investigation back in 1959, they sent Yuri Yudin out there. Now, you remember Yuri is the one that left early because he wasn't feeling well. So they sent Yuri out there to identify some of the campers' belongings. So he went out to the site, he identified what belonged to whom, and he also found some things that did not belong to any of them. He stated that 2 of their cameras were missing, and then there were also some items there that did not belong to them. So that gave more fuel to the conspiracies of the military came along, before anyone even knew they were missing, and did something to the group members. Or maybe the military just came along and found their dead bodies and never reported it because they were out there doing something. Now, I found this story really interesting because the conclusion that they came up with didn't really fit with the evidence that was presented. Of course, when they do investigations and things like that, they always leave things out. They don't tell the public everything. But it just didn't seem like they had enough evidence for an avalanche. The tent wasn't completely covered. It was only partially covered with snow. Searchers were able to go in there and see that their things were neatly lined up and everything in the tent was in order. So it doesn't really seem like an avalanche could have come down and done that much devastation to the point where all nine hikers died. So that's why I found this story really interesting. You may have heard it before. I had not heard anything about this before. If you have, and you have other theories, or maybe you agree with what the investigators found, let me know in the comments below. If you've heard other theories and you want to post those below as well, do that. If you've heard other theories and they make more sense to you, or maybe a theory that I just didn't find, let me know in the comments below as well. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope to bring you some more of these soon. I'm going to try to find some more things on the internet, and hopefully I can bring more of these videos a little more often. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.